Now, it is time for the last feature session of Day 1. The session will be on artificial intelligence for better engagement and empowerment, moderated by Professor Keeheon Lee, the Chair of Creative Technology Management of Underwood International College at Yonsei University.
Welcome everyone to the feature session on AI, artificial intelligence for better engagement and empowerment. My name is Keeheon Lee, and I'm Associate Professor at Underwood International College of Yonsei University. Last year, we held this session for the first time and invited distinguished speakers from academia, industry, international organization. We discussed issues such as the use of AI and machine learning to tackle climate change, global standards for the responsible use of AI, and the role of industry in promoting widespread adoption of AI tools. As adoption of AI continues to grow, the tools and the best practices to make the most out of AI are also becoming more sophisticated. Events such as the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic and climate emergencies are part of our new reality. As champions for sustainable development, we must be at the forefront and discuss how to best harness this technology to address new challenges. This year, we have a panel of returning speakers. We will continue last year's conversation and showcase their progress over the last year. We'll also discuss the adoption and impact of AI in 2021, recent AI uses for sustainable development, and our projections and hopes for how to shape its adoption in the future. It is my honor to introduce Dr. David Rolnick, Dr. Jung-Woo, and Dr. Chaesub Lee. Dr. David Rolnick is an assistant professor in Canada, CFAR AI chair in the School of Computer Science at McGill University and at Mila, Quebec, AI Institute. He is a co-founder and chair of Climate Change AI and serves as scientific co-director of sustainability in the digital age. Dr. Jung-Woo is the head of Naver AI Lab and is directing AI research of Naver. Dr. Chaesub Lee is the director of the ITU Telecommunication Standardization Bureau. And we're so glad to welcome you again this year and hope that this continuous and close exchange of ideas will inspire our viewers and show that interdisciplinary collaboration is possible. Please let's hear from Dr. Ha first, and you can share your screen.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I will share my screen. Okay, good. Yes, hello everyone. I'm Jung-Woo from Naver Global AI Lab. I'm happy to see you again and share our efforts for global engagement with respect to AI. Last year, I introduced our various technologies, applications, and efforts for AI. Today, I will more focus on leveraging hyperscale AI for better society, which has been one of the hottest issues in recent AI. Before entering, I briefly introduce Naver. Currently, there remain only 3 countries which they have their own search engine company, not dominated by Google. Yandex in Russia, Baidu in China, and Naver in Korea. Considering various situations, including political environments, I think Naver is the only one. Okay. Actually, Naver is a global platform company. We provide a wide range of services such as search engines, messenger, news, blog, video, cartoon, etc. in many countries. Naver is very popular in Europe and the US. Line is a global messenger platform. We acquired Wattpad, the #1 web novel platform in the world, and and Wallapop, EU #1 e-commerce platform. Clover is an AI headquarter of Naver, so most services of Naver and Line use AI technologies developed by Clover. Okay. At the panel discussion in last year, I emphasized AI as a powerful tool for productivity. So I introduced diverse AI applications such as OCR, speech recognition, voice synthesis, and AI-based call services for small, medium enterprises. Today, I will share 3 main themes like this. I like to remind that the most important thing of a platform company is the sustainable growth of platform players, including users, small, middle enterprises, and content creators, which leads to the growth of a tech platform company. We believe that AI is a core tool for achieving their sustainable growth. Although the advancement of deep learning brought many benefits, recent hyperscale AI can give users amazing functions which cannot be done by conventional AIs. Since OpenAI released GPT-3, many global tech companies have focused on this hyperscale AI and show totally new applications that is difficult to imagine. For example, OpenAI Copilot and DeepMind Alpha Code can generate human-level program codes. OpenAI's GPT-3-based model can solve even international mathematics Olympiad problems. So Naver also started to develop hyperscale AI from October 2020, and we opened our hyperscale AI Hyperclover in May last year. Beyond model production, we have successfully applied our Hyperclover to diverse applications. In particular, we focus on contributing to our platform users as a more powerful tool. For example, Hyperclover is applied to refine user queries for better search results, recommend product or event titles, verify some toxic comments by malicious customers for sellers of our e-commerce. The most meaningful application, I think, is care call service. I remember that I introduced Clover Care Call Service, AI agent that gives a call to quarantines of COVID-19. We extended it for more social disadvantaged people who need some help. For example, older people who have no family and live alone. The officers cannot cover all these people tightly. Our care call leveraging Hyperclover can give a call to these people, ask their health, and support them emotionally. According to our user survey, most of them like to make a conversation with our care call service, and even some people say they wait for the call every day. One of the distinctive points of Hyperclover is that it might make a paradigm shift of AI service development process. We developed a Hyperclover-based web application integrating convenient UI and UX, which is Clover Studio. We found the possibility of no-code AI, where any people who are not familiar with machine learning and software engineering can make their own AI-based simple proof of concept demonstration using our Clover Studio. AI literacy is the main issue for future. For better AI literacy in Korea, Naver enhanced more AI training and education courses for AI newbies. Beyond Korea, Naver contributes to global AI engagement. We established AI centers with 2 universities in Vietnam, HUST and PTIT. Many Vietnam young people want to learn AI, but there are not sufficient opportunities. So Naver provides some AI curriculums, hardware infrastructures, and collaboration research projects with 2 universities. In this year, our collaboration will be extended to more universities. Naver believes constructing the global AI ecosystem is very important for sustainable growth. So we will continue our efforts for better AI and better society. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jung-Woo. I guess Naver is lowering the barriers of AI for users and having many partnership with others to help people. Okay, let's hear from Dr. Chaesub Lee. You may share your screen, Dr. Lee.
Yes, thank you very much. I can try to show this my screen now. I hope you see this my screen. I expect. Okay, colleagues and friends, my thanks again for this very kind invitation of today. ITU is the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations specialized agency for ICTs. We have a global membership with 193 member states, over 800 private members, and also more than 150 universities. So I believe no other organization in the world has our unique public-private partnership models. What we have to do now is we coordinate the global allocation of radio frequency spectrum and the satellite orbital positions. We develop international standards, providing the technical foundations for communication networks that we support of developing countries around the world in setting up their information and communication infrastructures. Much of today's cutting-edge research includes artificial intelligence. This fact is also reflected in the work of ITU, where numerous work items refer to machine learning and AI. So we believe that everyone should participate in the conversation to determine how AI will factor into our future. So for this reason, ITU offers several platforms on AI, which are open to anyone. No membership is required. So AI for Good, organized by ITU, is the leading UN platform where conversations take place on AI, how AI can foster the sustainable development goals. AI for Good is an all-year, always online platform with almost daily programming. I already reported that last year. We featured startups as well as Nobel Prize laureates. So AI for Good is supported by 40 UN partners this year, as well as a range of industry sponsors. So AI for Good reached an audience of last year, over 180,000 people from 182 countries. I'd like to highlight our series of expert talks on machine learning in 5G, AI and climate science, AI and health, trustworthy AI, geospatial AI, AI and robots. So AI for Good has just launched a new service. So our networking platform, which we branded Neural Networks. So we invite you to join this platform to network and to watch hundreds of hours content. Much of ITU's technical work has been spawned by AI for Good. So technical work takes place in groups that we call focus groups. So this focus group also open platforms. No membership is required. I really invite you to look at these neural networks. There are tons of opportunity to network together. So one of our most exciting work items take place in the focus group on AI for health, driven by ITU together with the WHO. The health is a high risk, high stakes, and complex use cases, but with immense potential. So standards for AI in health are largely missing so far, but urgently needed. The technical, medical, scientific, policy, regulatory, and business aspects need to be considered in these standardization efforts and addressed on a global scale. So key gap identified early in this process is the lack of an independent platform to evaluate AI solutions. So 2 years ago, the focus group launched the so-called Open Code Initiative that has since evolved into a complete assessment platform run by ITWHO together in the cloud, where the entire data and the model ecosystem is integrated. This end-to-end solution stands out because it addresses all relevant aspects throughout the entire AI life cycle. So in the platform prototype, which is currently being tested in a pilot phase, so data can be uploaded and annotated, and the models can be tested and evaluation metrics generated. This is the first not-for-profit inter-regions AI model assessment platform prototype. So being developed in collaboration with the country-level regulatory agencies that have an interest in independent model assessments before granting of approval. So I thought this might be interesting for you. ITU has a launch of this machine learning tool set for communication networks. We just finished our second AI in 5G challenge. Over 1,600 professionals and students from over 80 countries, they participated to solve real problems in communication networks. We are now in process of curating the third edition of ITU AI in 5G challenge, as well as launching of these geospatial challenges. Our focus group on AI for natural disaster management is run together with the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, and the United Nations Environment Program, and examines how AI can be used to monitor and detect floods, tsunami, insect plagues, landslides, avalanches, wildfires, and more. Last October, we started together with a number of UN partners, the AI for Road Safety Initiative. So based on the work of our focus groups on autonomous and assisted driving, the AI for Road Safety Initiative will explore the role of AI in the following areas like road safety data and regulatory frameworks, safer vehicles, road infrastructures, and the post-crash response. AI, we have a focus group, another focus group studying environmental efficiency of AI and other technologies, which produce guidelines on the requirements, assessment, and measurement of technologies such as AI. Recently, we have our latest audition is a focus group on AI and the Internet of Things for digital agriculture, together with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. This will explore the potential of AI and IoT in supporting data acquisition and handling, improving modeling from a growing volume of agricultural and geospatial data, and providing effective communication for interventions related to the optimization of agricultural production processes. AI has extraordinary potential, as we know that IT also faces considerable challenges like bias, the lack of data, security breaches, lack of explainability of AI models, the lack of equitable access to know-how and the computing power. So all of these challenges require the collaboration and competition, I believe, among many stakeholders. So ITU offers a unique platform, brings together governments, companies, academia, and non-governmental organizations. So I invite you to join AI for Good movement to build better future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaesub Lee. From Dr. Ha's presentation, we could see that industry like Naver is working hard on AI for better engagement and empowerment, certainly. Now we see that ITU has been accelerating AI for good by having platforms where various groups can learn and work together. Great work. Thank you. And lastly, let's hear from Dr. David Rolnick.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. I'll be talking about specifically the intersection of AI and climate change, opportunities, challenges, and recommendations. I'll start out with a quick overview of the space, which I described in greater detail last year, including an overview of our taxonomy paper on tackling climate change with machine learning, which provides a detailed overview of many different applications where machine learning and AI can be relevant in climate change mitigation, so reducing greenhouse gas emissions, adaptation, responding to the effects of climate change, and climate science, understanding the climate better. This is a 100-page report, so I encourage anyone who's interested in more details to go and check that out. Some key opportunities that we found are distilling raw data into actionable information, whether that's by using satellite imagery to pinpoint deforestation, understand where communities are at risk from floods and coastal inundation, or using natural language processing to parse through large textual corpora, for example, to find climate relevant financial disclosures in corporate documents. So really taking unstructured data and turning that into, in all of these cases, insights that can be used to guide policy or otherwise shape meaningful action. The next theme that we touched on is improving predictions, so being able to forecast often from time series data, whether that's understanding electricity demand, how much electricity will be needed at any given point in time to help balance the electrical grid, or how much supply of electricity will be from variable sources like solar and wind power, or to predict things like food crop yield to ensure food security in the face of a changing climate. The third theme that we touched on is optimizing complicated systems with many knobs that one can turn, which AI is very good at. That can be everything from reducing the energy needed to heat and cool a building to optimizing freight transportation systems to increase efficiency or reduce waste or increase robustness. And then the final theme that we touched on is accelerating scientific modeling and discovery, often by incorporating physics-based constraints and knowledge into AI systems. So that ranges from applications in materials discovery, such as for the design of better materials in batteries, to accelerated scientific modeling in cases such as climate models, weather models, or energy use models in buildings, where the physics-based models are excellent, but certain components of them can be sufficiently slow that they need quick approximation by AI in order to make the models really scale up. So in all of these cases, we can see there are themes for AI's relevance to climate change action that cut across different sectors and areas of application. Importantly, it is essential to remember that AI is not a silver bullet in tackling climate change. It's not needed everywhere. And really, where it is useful, it's useful in conjunction with other tools. It's also important to remember that the high impact applications may not be the flashiest applications of AI that really make the news. Sometimes less flashy applications can be extremely impactful. It's also worth remembering that one should always start out with the simplest methods. I know that I'm a researcher in my group. We always start out with the simple methods, whether that's linear regression or a very simple neural network model, just to see whether those methods are sufficient, because the simplest method that works is definitely the best one for the job. One doesn't want to use the latest tools just for the sake of it. It's really important to have partnership between complementary experts, experts in relevant other fields in the domain of application, and ideally stakeholders who will be affected by or using the technology. That's really essential to make sure that this technology is scoped correctly and incorporates relevant deployment considerations and is really impactful in the end. So I want to now touch on some of the more recent developments that we've been working on, including this report for the Global Partnership on AI, which is a coalition of countries around the world, of which Korea is a founding member, which is geared towards really integrating national and international AI strategies. This report is focused on specifically recommendations for governments in the space of climate change and AI. This report provides a large number of concrete recommendations for governments, touching on many different areas. We have 48 specific recommendations, including how to improve policies for data and digital infrastructure, research and innovation funding, deployment and systems integration, and also in cases where AI can have negative impacts, either via applications or compute-related impacts on the climate. And cutting across all of these areas is the need to adopt a responsible AI lens, really think about the responsible practice and implementation of AI, thinking about capacity building in relevant organizations and international collaboration, and holistic impact assessment for AI's applications. Some selected recommendations from this report, and I encourage you to check out the full report if you're interested in more, are improving data standards and data sharing protocols via task forces and platforms. Often there is limited data, or that data which does exist is highly distributed or siloed within organizations which are not making it available for whatever reasons for use in relevant applications that may be of public benefit. Another recommendation that we make is really ensuring impact-driven funding for AI research and innovation. Often AI funding in the climate space falls through the cracks because AI funding can be driven by incremental improvements on benchmark tasks rather than really motivated by the applications that may be of most relevance to society. Both of these are important. Both methodological improvements and impact-driven improvements are necessary, and just really ensuring that both are present in the funding landscape is very important. There is a need to ensure that AI innovations make their way all the way through the pipeline from development to deployment. That includes incorporation of relevant deployment considerations, such as, for example, if you are an electrical grid operator, you may be very interested in the robustness of AI algorithms given the critical nature of grid infrastructure, and that may be a fundamental consideration which should be built into innovations from the start. Cross-sectoral innovation centers, including stakeholders from the private and public sectors and researchers, are really essential to ensure that innovations make their way through from the research and development stage all the way to deployment, incorporate relevant considerations in order to facilitate collaboration and incubate projects. Building AI capacity and literacy is really fundamentally important in climate relevant industries and government and civil society. In many cases, relevant organizations don't have sufficient AI knowledge in-house, which can lead to either, on one hand, a lack of understanding about where AI can be useful, or on the other hand, overconfidence and over-optimism about where AI is relevant in cases where it may not be relevant. So we recommend both upskilling programs, which include building capacity within existing members of organizations, and secondment programs, which involve bringing AI experts from externally into such organizations to contribute such expertise. It's really important to adopt a responsible AI lens for all of these applications. There are best practices that need to be developed regarding fairness and accountability. Participatory design is really important. To ensure that the stakeholders who are most affected by technology are involved in the development and deployment of that technology. And then finally, I want to mention considering the potential positive and negative climate impacts in shaping new technology development overall, because AI applications have an impact on the climate, just like other technologies, whether we are specifically designing them that way or not. And often we have choices about how we can design such technologies. For example, autonomous vehicle technology, if it's used to accelerate personal vehicles, self-driving personal cars, that is likely to make climate change worse because it will increase the amount that people drive, increase consumption of fuels, and increase greenhouse gas emissions. Even if each mile driven becomes slightly more efficient, the overall effect is expected to be negative. However, if we are incentivizing autonomous vehicle technology in public transportation and freight, that could potentially help make climate change better. So really, the implicit and explicit choices we make in shaping new technologies have an immense effect upon their ultimate impact from a climate perspective and from other perspectives. In conclusion, I want to highlight that both of these reports, the Tackling Climate Change and Machine Learning report and the Global Partnership on AI report on AI and climate, are initiatives involving Climate Change AI, which is an international nonprofit catalyzing impactful work at the intersection of climate change AI, of which I'm one of the chairs, along with Priya Donti and Lynn Kak. The Climate Change AI initiative includes a global network providing opportunities for intersection and synergy between experts in research, industry, and policy. We provide a lot of informational resources, including reports, webinars, and tutorials. A number of other resources, including some which have just launched. We just finished the first round of our innovation grants program, which is a multi-million-dollar initiative to provide targeted funding to catalyze further innovation in this area. We're also launching the first round of our summer school and other course materials, and we have many discussion platforms for engagement virtually, in addition to physical or recently virtual events at the top AI conferences, NeurIPS, ICML, and iClear, along with TEDx and the UN Climate Change Conference, or the COP. So I encourage you to check out climatechange.ai if you're interested in learning more about this space.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Rolnick. We can see that scholars in many disciplines are working together to use AI as a tool for climate action, for shaping AI's impact, and especially your selected policy recommendations seem to be very helpful to many other people. And yes, we need partnerships and need to solve our challenges together. Thank you all panelists for your presentations. Now let's have some discussion. I think we have a lot of things to discuss right now, as we talked about right now, and you may freely give your opinion and ask questions to each other.
Rather than question, I really express on my gratitude of this, David, as your approach about your highlighted upskilling and the secondment of these programs. I believe this is one of the important subjects now. So AI is mostly that we are initial phase to develop AI. So this is a natural situation, but by the nature of this AI, especially climate aspect or some people's or cultural background aspect, the secondment of this program, and also upskilling is so important subject. So I really support of that. We are in ITU, we also our effort to collaborate with our regional office and our regional collaborating organizations, how we can secondment of these programs. So I think it's a very good approach. So we have to continue. I'm really appreciative of this that part.
Thank you for the kind words. I'm really excited by the various initiatives which you mentioned, Chaesub, for that ITU, for example, is pursuing an AI for climate science thrust, and also many of the other areas of synergy that you mentioned, like AI and agriculture, also are climate relevant. It's not just the climate science component, obviously, that is intimately involved in climate action. So I'd be very interested in hearing more, if you can share about those various initiatives and learning more offline as well.
guess you two have many topics in common, I think, currently. So what would be the specific steps that you may have to develop what you said right now? So, for example, you have platforms, you talked about platforms and other things currently. And so to accelerate partnership between ITU and regional the scholars in the region that David is in, what would be the next step, kind of action items, maybe?
Maybe in this regard, I wish to again reiterate of this, what I explained of this. We recently launched of this called AI for Good Neural Networks. We operated AI for Good last around 4 years, more than 4 years, as we have collected many experts and the programs or projects. So all this collection, as I reported briefly, in case of last year, we have more than 180,000 participants from 180 countries. We collected all this information and put into this, our neural network. If you can join, if you can click on this, I have to definitely show this my presentation. So even you can go to the ITU website and the AI for Good Neural Networks. You can easily become member, just to subscribe. You can find out this interesting subject. And you can easily tailoring what you want and be part of this network. So we just provide the platform because we are United Nations system. So we provide such platform. That will be one way to link it together with David, your private network, climate aspect. We are very much excited of this, to have of that. And definitely, I wish to also invite of this Naver. So Naver is a very strong platforms in Korea, especially this Asian flavor. So why not to link it together? It would be very helpful.
Okay, so if you guys don't have anything to ask right now, I would just want to ask David about some more specific things about establishing best practices for responsible and participatory design. Can you elaborate more?
Absolutely. So to some extent, these will end up being sector or area specific. And I think that many of the challenges involved in responsible AI have been elaborated on very much better and in more depth in specifically responsible AI focused reports. One of the things that we highlight is how different considerations that maybe are overall present across AI take certain forms in the case of AI for climate action. So for example, interpretability may be particularly important if an AI system is being used by policymakers or by building operators, because they may not trust it without that kind of insight into what's going on, or guarantees of robustness, an understanding of uncertainty in the predictions of the model. So uncertainty estimation, interpretability, robustness are all extremely fundamental and take particular forms in context where if the algorithm is not robust, then the electrical grid might go down and power might be lost and people might die. So there are very serious consequences involved in such contexts. Another setting where I want to touch on maybe the particular form where general responsible AI considerations, the form that can take in climate relevant contexts is in the space of equity. There are obviously huge numbers of equity related considerations, but At the level of problem choice, I want to highlight, for example, that often the problems that are being worked on in the climate space are implicitly being defined by certain stakeholders. So, for example, we see much more focus on AI for combating wildfires, which is a great topic to be working on. I'm really glad people are working on that. We see much more focus and investment in that than in AI for combating locusts, for example. Wildfires and locusts are both serious problems, which are being exacerbated by climate change, but wildfires are primarily affecting North America, Europe, and Australia, and locusts are primarily affecting East Africa, the Middle East, and India. And so the focus on certain problems is very much shaped by certain stakeholders, as well as the way in which these are being worked on. Often data biases in different places means that algorithms are implicitly, sometimes very insidiously, tailored towards certain regions. If you're looking at satellite imagery, for example, there may be much more labels available in certain parts of the world than in others, which may mean the algorithm is much better in certain parts of the world than in others. And so really thinking about the ways in which equity considerations take shape in the climate space is very valuable in developing standards, best practices, and considerations for responsible AI in ways that may take slightly different forms in other areas of application.
Dr. Howard, do you want to add something more to Dr. Rolnick's said? What's Dr. Rolnick said? Because I see that you have some examples.
Yes, actually, that I agree with Dr. Rolnick, because I think it is very challenging issues for the predicting or the intervention for climate changes. I think actually prediction is very important issue, but I think intervention also is very the important issues for preventing the negative effect for some factors for the changing climate, I think. So the most important thing is to prevent climate changes, to make some the more explainable or interpretability for AI, because we need to control some factors to make them the worse effect for the climate changes, I think. And I think this is not case for only climate change. Actually, this explainability is main issues for many applications, kind of the financial issues, the healthcare issues, and in labor cases, because we are operating some kind of financial services, recommendation systems, and etc. So for more trustworthy and more reliable AI, we are also trying to make some more reliable AI also. So actually, we will establish another trustworthy AI center with Tübingen University of Tübingen for the more the trustworthy AI. Yeah.
I certainly see that. So first of all, Dr. Rolnick talked about responsible and participatory design that in data or in some problems, we see that some problems are shaped by certain stakeholders, right? Mm-hmm. So which means that we only see some problems only. So yeah. we may have to look for the other problems as well, right? That's what you said, Dr. Rolnick, right? Mm-hmm. And I see that Dr. Ha, as you said about climate change, yes, it is true. And I think also when you say interpretability and explainability and about data, I would assume that you would include the vulnerable people's data in your models. For example, that you talked about your example that you help old people by using like chatbots or something, right? And you can collect those data to make or to see some problems that we haven't seen before because we only have some data from not old people or isolated people, but
right.
normal people. So that would be maybe one part that we can think of, right? And maybe we can also use some platform that ITU developed to incorporate these all. Maybe that's what I think when I hear about what you're saying right now. And so, and I think those kind of things are really important, because what I see here is that we're losing data, which means that everyone dies, and it means that the whole data that the person generated is going to be not accessible to the other people, which may be really useful to humankind. Maybe that's my perspective, actually. Is that aligned with what you said, Dr. Rolnick?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last point about data.
Oh, so I was telling you guys that the data is always generated by a person mostly. Yes. And it means that if one dies, then the whole data that the person generated may be gone forever. And so, for example, isolated people or vulnerable people, we may have a chance to collect those data and see what's actually problem in their lives or something, so that we can use those to, help the other people. Yeah.
Potentially. I tend to think that data doesn't actually die often when a person dies. Often that data is still around, perhaps without their consent. A lot of the field of natural language processing was built upon public disclosure of confidential emails from the company Enron. Without those people realizing that they would be contributing to the field of NLP, and perhaps in more insidious ways when images are used by facial recognition companies without the consent of the parties or without their knowledge even. So data often does not die when a person dies, but certainly there are opportunities to think about equitable methods of data gathering that ideally include consent from all parties to ensure that, oftentimes the reason why data distributions are skewed is because people don't even think that they should be working to make them less skewed. Well, obviously, if one's collecting grid data, one is going to be collecting electrical grid data from the US, because that's where the stakeholders on the team are from. Or maybe they're just there is more availability of data from the US. Thinking in terms of what stakeholders are included on teams is really important, because if certain stakeholders are not included in the conversations, if they're not researchers from the Global South are included, for example, that is often one reason why data from the Global South may not be present, even if that data is available, or considerations from such stakeholders are not necessarily being incorporated.
Actually, the data has inherently biased and some limitations for the make some perfect data. So we need to send the more efforts to the debiasing and data for the generalized AI. And nowadays, there are some reports on the AI or models using only synthetic data for the avoiding these data bias issues in some the computer vision domains and etc. Yeah. So emerging tech, the synthetic data, the business, it can be regarded as a new business domain, as I know.
So, okay, thank you.
Perhaps. I have some concerns about you having technological solutions to find our way out of data bias. They certainly may be a role for such solutions, but I tend to think that they can obfuscate problems. So if you're training GANs to generate synthetic data, what are the GANs trained on? There's going to be some real data at the bottom of it, and oftentimes the framing of the problem. But I understand that there are developments in this area. We may not be disagreeing.
Actually, this synthetic data research is based on not just the typical generative models, but kind of some noisy style data from training from the noisy style data, etc. It's a very early stage of these kind of the research that I know. Yeah.
So for I just want to talk about the phrase that I talked about, like when person dies, the data goes. I mean by, the people who don't use Naver, right? Because they are isolated or,
I see. I misinterpreted that. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Oftentimes when, yes, that says something also about where many of the most powerful stakeholders are in tech and AI and the digital divide, which I'm certainly part of an institution in the global north that has a disproportionately concentrated power.
So that's one thing that I was trying to put on the table, and another thing that I want to talk about would be very impact-driven funding for AI research and innovation. Could you elaborate more? Because I really want to emphasize that one.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because we have Naver who can fund us, and we have ITU who can.
I'm really interested in hearing hearing your thoughts, Dr. Ha and Dr. Lee, on this, because I really see a gap sometimes, particularly in AI funding. That AI funding is often purely focused on sort of methodological improvements abstracted away from their societal impact. And clearly we need both methodological advances and impact-driven advances. And oftentimes impact-driven advances, I find, can spur methodological improvements. And really there are so many good test cases, for example, for hybrid physical models in the climate domain. And hybrid physical models or interpretability are key AI challenges. And by focusing on where they can be very impactful, we can, I think, drive AI innovation overall and also contribute to beneficial impacts. I also see that oftentimes impact-driven funding is purely directed towards moonshots, and one really wants to escape this moonshot mentality. Obviously, there are certain high-impact problems which people should be working on, but oftentimes focusing on sort of medium-impact problems which aren't quite as high variance or high risk, but can have maybe the low-hanging fruit in terms of societal impact can be really, really valuable. So I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts, Dr. Lee and Dr. Ha.
Maybe Dr. Ha, if not the case, let me start. Let me try. Yeah, that's not an easy subject. Even it fully depends on the subject areas and whether those are some stakeholders who engage with that subject areas. But as David, you said about there's some of the different priorities. Very recently, I want to make one of reference, one of example case when what ITU we have a seriously challenge now regarding all this climate aspect. Very recently, near Tonga has some of a volcanic explosion. As ITU we addressed more than 10 years ago, we tried to develop further detailed development of this ocean maps, use of submarine cable, submarine telecommunication cable. You know, this whole of the oceans overall submarine telecommunication cable is already installed. So we wish to put all this almost every 4 kilometers or sometimes 10 kilometers, we have a repeater. So we use of these repeaters to put on these sensors to look at ocean status. If we can launch this project as well, then we pretty much sure our knowledge, our prevention of this, the ocean environment is quite seriously improved. But it's very, very difficult to get attention from our funding raisers. So we spent more than 10 years. We still have an effort, but very fortunately, end of last year, we got some of a green, small but green signal from some members. So we expect to have getting more. But what I want to highlight is sometimes some subject is very infrastructural, essential core part. Some part is impactful, but as a consequence. So how we can make this balance between all these consequence areas and some of core competence areas? That is still a challenge. But I don't see we really need of this global guidance, but it's we have to continuously challenge it, bring all this those stakeholders' attention with our exporting areas. So even both of your business area, we try to bring this is important subject for your consideration. For the moment, this is what we have to do. So I wish to show this as an example case from ITU.
Actually, in business side, basically, I agree with Dr. Rolnick. And actually, I agree with Dr. Lee, because in business side and in early stage, a small success is very important to investment. We need some, we need to show some many small success for the continuous investment. But after some small success, then we need to make some impactful result for the more the powerful investment or powerful the research or the powerful technology technology part. So I think it depends on some situation and the stages. But basically, for the further impact or further the effect of the AI technology, then the impact-driven approach is basically is reasonable. But depending on the situation, we need to focusing on some many small success for using the low-hanging fruits, etc. I think.
Dr. Rolnick, do you have any examples for like that some technology that may make small successes from AI for climate change?
That is at the stage of like really like a fairly early stage of technological readiness, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that most of the examples that I highlighted are later stage technological readiness. Any particular example might be a bit earlier, but generally they're at a later stage, and many of them are already being deployed and scaled up. I think that some of the materials science applications are a bit earlier in materials discovery for batteries, for catalysts, for photovoltaic cells or solar perovskites or carbon sorbents. There's room for more AI-guided discovery there, and that's not supplanting experiments in these areas. It's really helping to direct them and pick what learn the most from experiments. We're seeing this in the drug discovery space too, in a similar way to materials discovery, but I think it's still very much early stages, and there remains a lot of innovation that can happen there at a very early technological readiness level.
Thank you. Talking about technological readiness and impact and consequences, let's talk about big models, large-scale models like GPT-3 and Hyperclova. Is it for societal impact or is it for benchmark improvement? Dr. Ha?
Yeah, actually, in benchmark performance, the large-scale language model shows amazing results, and I think the most important thing it showed the new innovative things actually large-scale linked models can provide some new result that conventional AIs cannot do that. That is the most important thing. Because using these new functions, we can operate or we can provide the new global care services for all the people. Right? Actually, when we apply the conventional chatbot systems, then the people do not like these services because that services feel some like some robot or not natural conversation. But when we applying our hyperglobal model to this our new care call services kind of the conversation model, they very satisfied our services. That is that it means new technology can very impactful or innovative societal positive effects. So I think we can make some more application for the better society, I think, yeah. Of course, we agree with some the energy consumption issues and some many limitations, but we need to make some continue to the research for the elevate these issues, I think.
So basically, large companies are making large models currently a lot, and yeah. I see there are positive sides, but there may be negative sides, right?
Yes, yes. So actually, we are preparing some opening our hyperglobal to the global studio to use everyone, but actually there are some still remains some limitations. So we are serving some closed beta services for some restricted people users, but we will extend to more people to use our large scale linked model for their services or their product and their research.
So we see that large companies are building large models just like a race, right? And it's at one point, it surely generates innovative solutions that we could not generate before with the small models, but at the same time, there are many concerns. So we want to talk about these concerns in perspective, in the view of scholars and like international organization. So I want to ask David and Chaesub about this.
Yeah, let me say, it's a little difficult to say this is depends on the volume of this project. I want to say this is more relevant how we can close to representing real environment. I think as Mr. Ha, your explanation is now that your customer is satisfied with improved this updated your service. Your service is more close to the real world. So now it's even video codings, audio, speech, audio, machine speaking, all capabilities we are now quite well improved. But all this area also need also engagement from the AI machine learning because they have to get us more close data and then imitate of this data to present of their service. So maybe in this regard, all areas like health domains, even climate domains, we need a more close represent of this more closely represent of this real world. So how we can improve of that real presentation, even let me say this, assuming metaverse with such wonderful 3D and audio, visual, this that make people really satisfied or people like it, but we know still far away. Even not only service and application aspect, but also we need to huge improvement of our communication infrastructure as well. So this is a recursive subject as this whole ecosystem always linked together, how we can improve together. That would be one of the big subjects, but definitely technical improvement is really helpful for enhancing of our service and our business models, I believe.
On my side, I guess I would say two things. One is that overall, so large language models, and you mentioned energy concerns. Those are concerns that I definitely have. They're probably not my biggest concerns about AI from a climate perspective. They're also probably not my biggest concerns about large language models. For AI from a climate perspective, I'm more concerned about applications of AI to recommender systems that are being used to increase, just specifically designed to increase consumption of goods, and are probably significantly increasing society's greenhouse gas emissions as a result. And for example, applications in the fossil fuel industry in extraction and exploration for fossil fuels, applications of AI and advanced analytics are expected to contribute $500 billion in additional profit to the fossil fuel industry by 2025 alone. So really, there are these ways that AI models are being used, which I'm particularly concerned about. I'm also concerned about direct energy consumption, but again, for large language models, I would say that there are a multitude of concerns that have been raised by the scholarly community, which I'm not going to get into because I'm not a relevant researcher, but I would point in particular to work of Emily Bender and Timmy Gebru and others highlighting other risks of large language models. Everything from the data that these models are often trained on, and the way in which they can serve to reinforce existing narratives and the perspectives of dominant stakeholders, accentuate extreme views or marginalize already marginalized communities, and so some of the implicit choices, everything from the data choices to what languages are being trained on, and the ways in which such language models can be used. In addition, I guess fundamentally, like, larger models do get me concerned about what stakeholders are able to train and run such models, because only certain places and institutions have the ability to control such models, given the computational costs.
Thank you. One concern I had was something relevant to the responsible AI. So going back to the data issue that we talked about, right? We see that this large language models have all the things inside, but actually it's not all, right? So there are biases inside. There are things that we didn't consider before. So is there any way to, I think last time, Dr. Ha talked about debiasing or other technological solutions. Will there be any other regulatory solution or other design solutions and other things that we can think of?
Yeah, actually, there are many efforts to elevate these issues from the data to evaluation. So actually, there are many approaches for the data biasing or debiasing and the model architectures and loss functions, and how to evaluate the model performances and how to make the evaluation data and the evaluation protocols. So actually, these are well-known problems, and many researchers try to solve these issues, including our research organization. So I think for resolving these issues, the collaboration, including many diverse interdisciplinary experts, is very important issues to resolve these issues, because this is the main critical point for the sustainable AI, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. David and Chaesub, do you have any?
Let me say, because I have to leave now, that is very important subject, but I want to highlight we need a really training, education to human, not to say AI. AI is a result of our human effort. So humans should be responsible. Responsible people engage with this AI development. So even data bias to find out this by AI, definitely I'm interested how we can assess of this AI performance in terms of this bias, all this negative side. We need certain assessment platforms to ensure those AI is developed fit for purpose. We have to ensure that. But from the relatively of this, to define this AI regulation, let me say human regulation.
I would strongly second that, and maybe this is a good place to close too. That really fundamentally AI choices are choices about people. They're by people. They're for people, and we're very fond as AI practitioners or researchers of thinking of technological ways out of things, but there's only so far that one can go there, and fundamentally the decisions are being made by humans whether we like it or not, and if they're not being made explicitly, they're being made implicitly, and sometimes in ways that we don't understand. And maybe that's a theme overall here, that fundamentally AI decisions are human decisions, and that we want to shape those as consciously as possible, and also decide where AI shouldn't be applied at all, because there will be many cases where that is the case, that is not the right tool for the job, for various different reasons.
Thank you. And any last remark that you want to make, Dr. Ha?
I agree with the two people. So actually the regulation, yes, for sustainability, regulation is required, but I think actually this is very early stages for the AI, and we need to educate people how to use AI for their life. That is very important issues. So actually we have no opportunity to educate the internet. So some people use malicious using internet, right? Some the toxic comment or etc. I think we need to educate many people for make some good AI usage. I think there's many issues.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all our panelists for their presentations and thought-provoking discussions. I'm sure that our audience greatly benefited from your insights. I would like to conclude this session by emphasizing one point from our discussion today, especially what Dr. Rolnick shared today. Partnership between complementary experts is crucial. Let's continue to engage our communities and empower one another as we utilize AI to create a more sustainable and equitable common future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's been a long day. Thank you for staying with us on day one of the Global Engagement and Empowerment Forum held virtually via Yonsei University. Our hope is that the legacy of these times will not be of grief and sorrow, but that these times will be a testament of human resilience and celebration of lives spent to better the lives of others. The sessions held today demonstrated that much effort has been spent to actualize such hopes. But surely there is more to be done, of which we will continue to explore with diverse stakeholders. So, see you in a few hours in day two. Actually, it's only a few hours a day. and we will have more exciting guests who are waiting to be heard. Good night from Seoul, Korea.